the Senate was up for reelection. And the election, did it go like they thought it was going to go? No, it didn't.
I saw some controversial stuff that I didn't know happened.
I don't know if is it legal to go in and like watch your parents vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to do that when I was a kid.
Yeah, I
It didn't go. Everyone was expecting a big Republican blowout, and it wasn't. They're probably going to win control of the House of Representatives, but they're not. They're probably not going to win control of the Senate, or if they do, it'll be by one seat. So really, really surprised a lot of people. Like I said, I didn't stay up late and watch. You know me, I got to drive a bus, so I got to. When I went to bed by 8 o'clock, I watched a documentary on PBS about Huey Long and I went to bed. So.
My mom also thought something was going to get passed. It didn't.
Yeah, none of the ballot initiatives got passed, including
All four of them?
All four of them failed, which I didn't really surprise me.
What was the religious freedom one about?
I didn't really understand that one. I voted against it. I'll just tell you that.
You voted against religious freedom?
Yeah.
We already have religious freedom.
Under the what amendment?
18, 17. Wait, was I right? One.
Yeah, I was right.
First Amendment. All right. So anyway, when the framers wrote the Constitution, and we call them the framers because they were the people that framed the government and built it. They wrote the Constitution, and they included Congress in Article 1 because I think, and a lot of historians, political scientists think, they wanted it to be the most important part of the government, the part that makes the laws. Now, does the president make laws?
No.
No, they don't. Who
Is it
makes
the
the
Senate?
laws? Congress.
Oh.
They're the ones that make the laws. I hear a lot of people with a lot of confusion about that. Because we have, Congress was given the lawmaking power by the Constitution.
Like the president approves it, right?
Well, the president executes the law, carries it out. We learn about the presidency in the next chapter, and you'll learn about that. That's what they call it, the executive branch. He executes, or she executes the law. So Congress has the sole power to make laws for the government. That's Congress's job. And they've got a lot of lawmaking powers. Like coining money. Only Congress can issue money, can issue coins and paper money through the mints and the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. They're the only ones that can manage commerce, regulate the economy. They regulate interstate commerce especially, which is commerce between the states. And just about what's interesting about interstate commerce, and there's what's called the Commerce Clause in Article 1 that gives Congress the power to regulate commerce. Almost everything is interstate commerce. A lot of civil rights decisions, like on, barge segregation, like on buses and in hotels and restaurants, was all based upon the federal government's power to regulate commerce, interstate commerce between states. I could go into much detail on that, but we're not making that. So all of Congress's duties, they're spelled out in the Constitution. They're actually listed. They're called the express powers, but if you number them out, they're the enumerated powers. That's the powers Congress has. For example, borrowing money. Why would the government need to borrow money?
From who?
Good question.
China?
Texas.
Yes.
Not necessarily. The government borrows money through the sale of bonds, treasury bonds. Anybody ever been given a savings bond?
No.
You never have? Have you? No? Savings bond like you used to when I was a kid. Like for all the contests a kid could win, they wouldn't give you cash. They'd give you like a $50 savings bond. And what it is, a piece of paper, you've loaned the government $50. And like in 4 years or whatever, you can go take it to the bank and cash it in for $70 because they paid you $20 in interest. You've loaned the government money with interest.
It's complicated for a kid to know.
Yeah, I know. They mainly do that so kids wouldn't take, $50 and just spend it at the arcade.
We just get stickers now.
I've gone downhill. You can't redeem those stickers at the bank. They have to borrow money when they don't have enough income from taxes to cover their expenses. So the government borrows money all the time by selling bonds. Is our government in debt right now?
Yes.
You may want to guess how much?
2 billion, 4 billion.
31 trillion.
Whoa. Why?
13.1 trillion. Because we have run, since the 1970s, the United States has only had a balanced budget for 3 years.
Wait, and that to who?
Different people.
Ourselves?
Ourselves, a lot of it. We owe money to the Social Security Trust Fund. Foreign governments buy U.S. Treasury bonds. They like to buy U.S. Treasury bonds because the United States has never defaulted on its debts. It's considered very, very safe to invest money. Like the stock. I'm not gonna.
Is our credit score really high?
What's that?
Is our credit
Yeah,
score?
our credit
really
score is
high?
very, very high. Yeah, very high because we pay our bills. That's good. That means the government can borrow money at a lower interest
It
rate.
means that you pay all of your
You
debt.
pay on time, yeah. It's just like, the government hasn't had its car repossessed recently. So,
You're good for your money.
well, the government, I guess, it repossessed like military equipment or something. Only Congress can collect taxes or levy taxes. The power of taxation belongs strictly to the House of Representatives. They're the only one, all tax bills have to start in the House. The Senate has to approve them, they all start in the House. Bankruptcy laws are federal only, controlled by Congress, regulated by Congress, set by Congress.
Mr. Gillespie,
Yes, ma'am?
I need Emma Smart for checkout, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
You just go. This is one that a lot of people don't know about. Declaring war. Only Congress can declare war.
So what does it mean when the president says, like, I declare war?
He doesn't declare war.
Oh, he doesn't.
The president is, let me explain. The president is commander-in-chief of the military. That means the Secretary of Defense, all the generals, they answer to the president. They follow the president's orders. The president can send troops into military action or commit military action without a formal declaration of war. The last time the United States formally declared war was in 1941 against Germany. That's the last time. Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War I, Gulf War II, Afghanistan, they were all fought without a declaration of war.
So it's not that important?
What's that?
So
Is
when-
it not that important to?
So when does what does it mean when a president says, like, what was it? It was like in Afghanistan or Iraq, and one of our presidents said that he declares war on Iraq.
He never said he declared war on Iraq. What he did was he got Congress to pass a bill that authorized the use of military force.
So
We
he
call
just
that
said-
a blank check.
What did he say?
He didn't really, he just said, I'm sending troops into Iraq.
Yeah.
I'm attacking Iraq.
He said that, like, we're gonna be raising your kids or something like that. I forgot.
I don't think so.
He said the soldier, if they don't back out of somewhere. I
I
forgot.
don't know, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
All right, but like I say, Congress, I want to can declare war. And one thing, like I say, Congress has a role in war making because they're the ones that approve the money to fight the war. So like in Vietnam, for example, we got out of Vietnam finally because Congress finally just told the president, no more money, like your parents say, I'm not writing you another check, no more. What you take when that happens? Naturalization, they decide who is going to be a citizen. Only the federal government handles immigration and naturalization. I've been in the news, some of these states have tried to, enforce immigration laws or whatever they can't. Only the federal government can. And regulating foreign trade. The United States, interestingly enough, is one of the only countries in the world that does not tax exports. Do we tax some imports? Yeah, what do we call taxes on imports? Starts with a T.
Crap. Something like the tip of my tongue, I just can't quite remember it.
It's a tariff. A tariff. My brother complains all the time about the 25% tariff on casters and wheels coming from China. So he wants that to go away. All right, let me go pick on the next one here. I need a clicker.
You do need a clicker.
I got to exercise first. My favorite ones. My two favorite people,
Sweet.
Jefferson and Hamilton.
That's a good picture.
There's Hamilton, there's Jefferson. All right, let's y'all write this a little bit and we'll talk here. Now, the rivalry between Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson is like one of the most interesting things in history. Of course, what happens to Alexander Hamilton?
He gets shot.
He gets shot, and guess who shot him? No.
Burr.
The Burr, who was the vice president at the time, in a duel in Weehawken, New Jersey in 1804. What's interesting, Hamilton fired his pistol into the air and Burr didn't. Burr shot him to kill him. And Burr got in some trouble for it.
Was it like a public showdown?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Like they told everyone, tomorrow we're gonna be at.
Yeah, I've got a video somewhere. Somebody did a reenactment of it on YouTube and pretended to have ESPN reporters covering it. It was pretty funny. So, it was like the nasty campaign commercials from the election of 1800. All right, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. Do you need to remember that exact thing? No, because I'm not that particular. But you need to know what it is. What it says in that is that Congress has powers beyond those that are written in the Constitution. This is what gives people trouble. This is what constitutional lawyers do. They try to figure out what the Constitution means. What did the people who were writing the Constitution mean when they wrote it? And that's a problem, because guess what we haven't invented yet? A time machine to go back and ask them. Wouldn't you like to go back and ask James Madison, what did you mean when you wrote this? And Alexander Hamilton, what did you mean when you wrote this? Oh, by the way, don't fight a duel. Yeah, they're implied. They're pointed at by the expressed powers. And this was done, I think, because this was a constitution meant to endure. It was not meant for a short-lived country. It was meant for posterity. By the way, you know what that word means, posterity?
Like, longevity?
The longevity, a long time. Yeah. I mean, it was written for, the United States when it was created, Benjamin Franklin said this is a country and a constitution created for, generations yet unborn. So they knew over time that the world would change. Especially people, Jefferson wasn't involved in the Constitutional Convention. He was in France at the time. He was enjoying his life. He enjoyed it for a little while, and the French Revolution started, and he came back. They call it the elastic clause, because what is elastic? Stretchy, it's flexible, isn't it? Do you need a Constitution to be flexible?
Yes.
Yeah, you do. You really do. So they call it that because it allows Congress to stretch its powers. Also called the necessary and proper clause. I've always called it the elastic clause. But it allows Congress to use its express powers, but not to the letter that they're actually in the Constitution. For example, there's nothing in the Constitution that says Congress has the power to create a United States Air Force. Why do you think that is? Why is there nothing in the Constitution about an Air Force?
Because it wasn't a thing back, there was no planes.
There were no planes in 1787. There wouldn't be, and you might know what year the first airplane flew.
1860.
1912. No, that's a Titanic.
1903. 1903, it's right, Rose.
What was like the 1860s? Was that, or no? The
Well, you're thinking of
1600s were like balloons.
Yeah, a guy had that balloon in France,
Yeah.
which I think the first guy to go in the balloon had to be incredibly brave.
Yeah.
So it doesn't say anything in there about creating an Air Force. It's kind of like the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment gets written. What's the Second Amendment talking about?
Right to bear.
Right to bear arms, yeah. There's a lot of debate about the meaning of that one. It doesn't say anything about, you get the right to own a fully automatic machine gun, because machine guns didn't exist in 1787. So, nothing in there about an Air Force, but Congress created an Air Force anyway. They created a Space Force too, because the Constitution says that Congress can create an Army and a Navy. You just simply extend it to that. Now, I'm going to give you two good examples up here. I'm going to bring in Hamilton and Jefferson to talk about. Now, Hamilton and Jefferson were major political rivals. They're two of the greatest men that ever lived in the United States. I consider Jefferson to be the most important American that ever lived, along with my buddy up there. And Jefferson and Hamilton had two completely different views of the Constitution. Hamilton had actually been involved in the writing of the Constitution. Remember, Jefferson was away on his Parisian vacation, or He was ambassador to France. In 1790, Alexander Hamilton becomes Secretary of the Treasury, and we have all sorts of financial problems, all this debt. And Hamilton wanted to establish a central bank, the Bank of the United States, which would be a government chartered bank, and the government would use it to deposit funds and pay people and things like that. It would be a bank for bankers, just like the Federal Reserve Bank does today. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you can establish a central bank. Nothing. It says Congress can establish a central bank. Hamilton argues that yes, what is not specifically forbidden in the Constitution is allowed. He's a loose constructionist, is what we call that. Jefferson over here is a strict constructionist. He says, no, Mr. Hamilton. What is not specifically allowed in the Constitution is forbidden. Hamilton wins because he had to convince George Washington, who's the president. And Congress establishes the Bank of the United States in 1791 over Secretary of State Jefferson's opposition. We're going to fast forward to 1803. Jefferson, who's lost his red hair, now it's gray. He's president. He gets an opportunity to buy Louisiana from the French for a very cheap price. Is there anything in the Constitution that says that the president can just unilaterally buy huge amounts of land from a foreign power? No! Guess who decides to become a loose constructionist at that moment? Jefferson. He was willing to put aside his, firm beliefs just to, he's flexible. He's just like the Constitution is flexible. So
It's very hard to run a country out there. Like, you can do like 18 things and that's it.
yeah, it's very, you're right. You're very right. I tend to lean towards the strict constructionist viewpoint of things. I kind of have a little bit narrow view. But on the other hand, you're right. You can't just, you can't be hamstrung. You can't hamstring future generations with 18th century ideas. That, we can't establish an Air Force because there's nothing in the Constitution about it.
Sort of like how there in the Bible there's a New Testament.
Yeah, the Constitution and the Bible have a lot in common because they're widely interpreted. You can look at a verse, 10 people can look at a verse in the Bible and say 10 different things to it. Same thing with the Constitution. You can look at a clause in the Constitution and 10 people can look at it and come up with 10 different things.
The Louisiana Purchase was $15 million, right?
I think so. It was a heck of a deal. That's how Arkansas became part of the United States.
How much money would that be like now?
I'd have to go plug it into an inflation calculator,
Yeah.
in which they exist. All right. Non-legislative powers. Now, the most important power is, of course, that Congress has making laws, making sure that taxes are collected. But they have non-legislative powers, and probably the most important non-legislative power that Congress has is the power of oversight. Checks and balances. They check the power of the executive branch. They check the power of the legislative branch. They can investigate presidents. They can investigate the executive branch. Who's a president that was heavily investigated by the executive branch, by the Congress? What's that? Well, Trump's one of them. I can think of a lot. Clinton, who? Nixon, that's right. Nixon's my favorite example because Nixon was actually driven from office by congressional investigation. And I'll talk about that here in a few minutes, about what he did. He did some things that were not legal. He believed that if the president did something, it was not illegal. I don't know where you get that logic, but he got it.
So it was almost like he was a tyrant in his mind.
Yeah, in his mind, he could do anything he wanted. Found out not to be the case, especially when you record yourself being a tyrant and breaking the law. So, you should have thought about that before he did that. Which was surprising because Nixon was super intelligent. He was paranoid. All right. So every constitutional amendment that's come out of Congress requires a I believe a two-thirds majority in each house of Congress. So every one of them, all 27, were sent to the states from Congress. Of course, you got to have 3/4 of the states to ratify a constitutional amendment. That's why ERA was never ratified. Couldn't get enough states. The Senate in particular has a very, very important role because the Senate has the power to accept or reject the president's appointees. For like the Supreme Court, for example. Anybody know how many Supreme Court justices President Trump got to appoint?
One, two,
3. And actually, it changed the balance of the court because he had a Republican-controlled Senate and they approved his Supreme Court nominees. And it changed the balance of the court. It was 5-4. There were 5, I think it was 5 conservatives and 4 liberals. And now there's 6 conservatives and 3 liberals. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. She was a liberal justice. And he appointed Barrett, Barrett to the court, and she's a conservative. And of course, what happened this year? What court decision got overturned and made a lot of people angry? Roe v. Wade did, yeah. So, being able to approve justices to the Supreme Court, that's an important job by the Senate. It has real-world consequences. The election yesterday was probably influenced by that court decision. There were a lot of Democrats that were really motivated to vote. I should know. They also get to they approve all federal judges as well. By the way, how long do Supreme Court judges and federal judges serve for? How long is their term?
8 years.
and
Forever.
forever.
Life. Be a pretty good job to have, wouldn't it? Pays pretty good.
Really?
Well, when you're in the Supreme Court,
How hard is it to like get on?
Very hard.
you have to
Do
be,
you vote
don't
for
you have to
me
be
just
like
because I
the
was
best?
your student?
Depends on,
You don't get to vote for me.
I don't get to vote for you now. The president would appoint you and you'd have to be confirmed by the
You
Senate.
become president, and then you.
I'm unelectable. I have too many unpopular views. You wouldn't know. It's too much stress for me. I see how presidents look when they become president and then when they leave office. I don't need the power of life and death. Ambassadors, that's our representatives in their countries. They're approved by the Senate. I believe we've got a new ambassador to Russia that's been appointed, and she's going to be approved by the Senate. All of the heads of the executive departments, like the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Agriculture, they're all appointed, and then they have to be confirmed by the Senate. And then finally, Congress gets to impeach federal officials. And by the way, they can impeach people besides the president. They've impeached a lot of judges, and they've removed some judges from office. So I'm going to talk about impeachment because a lot of people don't understand what that word means. I see all the time bumper stickers, wanting to impeach the president. I remember back in the 90s when I was in high school and college, you'd see these bumper stickers, impeach Clinton now. And it's like people didn't understand what that meant. Impeachment doesn't mean automatic removal from office, just like the name says. That was from the Matrix, and I've never seen that movie. It's one of the things about impeachment that a lot of people, they just don't understand. They think, oh, they're impeached, they're removed from office. Not the case at all. By the way, does anybody know who that is? It's Andrew Johnson. He was the 17th president of the United States. He was the one that took office when Lincoln was assassinated. He's a prime example of why presidents need to be very careful when they're picking their running mates to be vice president.
Because then they'll take office. Once
Yeah, they might become president. They may not need to be president. Some vice presidents turned out to be pretty good. I mean, Theodore Roosevelt was a good one when he became president. Impeachment doesn't mean what people think it means. It just means to accuse a person of doing something wrong. Now, one thing I want to make clear about impeachment. Impeachment is a political process. It is not a criminal process. If you get impeached, they aren't going to send you to jail. Now, you might get prosecuted by the Justice Department or something like that and go to jail, but you won't go to jail for being impeached. Impeachment is strictly a political process. You are accused of doing something wrong. Now, why would you need to impeach a president or any other elected official?
It's like not doing their job, right?
Yeah, one way.
They're causing problems. for
They're
the
causing
country.
problems, yeah.
They're making, they're,
Doing something that's bad.
they're breaking
Good.
alliances.
They're breaking, yeah, maybe. What else?
Doing something that's bad for the country.
Yeah, the Constitution is not clear on the issue of what you can impeach someone for. All it says is that the president and federal officials can be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors. What are high crimes and misdemeanors?
Up to us to decide.
It's up to the House of Representatives to decide. In the case of Andrew Johnson, they decided the high crimes and misdemeanors were he was in their way. Impeachment is something, particularly of the president, that when it's been done, I think it's been done most of the time for political reasons. The one president who did get forced from office, Richard Nixon, was actually never impeached. He was going to be impeached and he was going to be removed from office. He resigned to avoid that fate.
You didn't want to be the first person successfully.
Removed from office, yeah, he would have been removed. In fact, he resigned when Republican members of the United States Senate went to the White House and told him, he said, you're going to be impeached and you're going to be removed from office. We've counted the votes. Because what happens is the House can impeach any federal official, including the president. A lot of judges have been impeached. And like I said, they can impeach somebody for any reason. Before election day, I heard, I read a lot of news, and they were talking about, well, the Republicans take the majority in the House, they're going to impeach Biden, President Biden. And I'm like, okay, what are they going to impeach him for? And basically, the member of Congress says, we'll figure out a reason. It's like, we're going to arrest somebody we don't like, we'll find a reason later. We'll plant some evidence, things like that. So anyway, the House can impeach any federal official for any reason whatsoever. Now, do you think that's necessarily a good system?
Not really.
Maybe not. Does it have the potential to be abused?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not-
I think it does. And I'll talk about the impeachments in history. So the way it works is the House can impeach any federal official. And they do it with a strict majority vote. Most of the impeachments I can think of Bill Clinton and Donald Trump were all along a strict party line vote. What does that mean, a party line vote?
They're like all the same people.
Yeah, all the Republicans voted to impeach Bill Clinton. All the Democrats voted to impeach Donald Trump. And it was all Republicans that voted to impeach Andrew Johnson. I'll talk about Johnson in a minute. So the way it works is, if you've got enough for just a majority, you can impeach a president. But it has to go to trial in the Senate. And in the Senate, they have higher standards. The Senate serves as the jury. It takes a 2/3 majority to convict someone in an impeachment trial in the Senate. By the way, how many jurors have to agree in a criminal case to declare someone guilty? You said it. All of them, that's right, all of them. So there's not as high a standard. And the only punishment for impeachment is you get removed from office, which probably would have been, Andrew Johnson probably would have liked it. I don't think he liked the job. So 3 presidents have been impeached. I'm going to talk about the first there, Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson, the best way to describe him is a round peg in a square hole. What's that mean?
Didn't fit in.
Didn't fit in, that's right. He was put on the ticket in 1864 as Lincoln's running mate because they were running on a ticket, a Union ticket. Johnson was actually a Democrat. He had been a senator from Tennessee. He had been the only Southern senator who had not resigned his seat when his state seceded from the Union. So he's loyal to the Union, but he was a Democrat, he was a war Democrat, they called him. And so he's put on the ticket to appeal to Democrats in 1864. Lincoln was a Republican. Well, when Lincoln is assassinated, Johnson begins to carry out the process of Reconstruction, that is, the readmission of the southern states into the Union. And he, in some ways, he did it the way Lincoln would have done it, which was give the South an easier Reconstruction. The people in the North were angry because Lincoln had been assassinated. And he was blocking a lot of the Reconstruction laws that were being passed by Congress, by the radical Republicans, as they were called. Charles Sumner, can't remember the guy's name, the guy had the wig, Thaddeus Stevens. And so they came up with a law. They passed an unconstitutional law in Congress, the Tenure of Office Act, which required the president to get approval from Congress before he got rid of any department head. That's clearly unconstitutional because it violates separation of powers. It didn't matter. Well, he fired the Secretary of War, who, by the way, barricaded himself in his office and they had to drag him out. But that was embarrassing. So they impeached Andrew Johnson for violating the Tenure of Office Act. He was found not guilty by one vote in the Senate. His political career was over. Well, he did run for senator and win again. Richard Nixon was going to be impeached. He was going to be removed from office. He resigned to avoid that fate. In 1998, Bill Clinton was impeached by the House of Representatives for obstruction of justice, perjury, what is perjury, by the way?
I don't know if, like, part of it,
Lying under oath. I won't go into what got Bill Clinton in a lot of trouble, but he got in some trouble.
I
And
think I know what it was.
yeah, it wasn't good. It was not good at all. I was in college when it happened. And yeah, he was impeached, but he wasn't removed from office. I mean, it wasn't even close. The Republicans all voted to impeach him. He was impeached on all Republican votes. Some of the Republicans, though, voted not to convict him. Then Donald Trump, he was impeached twice. The first time for that Ukraine thing, where he was like ordering the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. And then in 2021 for the January 6th. And the problem with the second impeachment was, by the time the trial started, he was no longer president. I really think that if he had still been president in that second one, he would have been removed. I think they would have voted to remove him from office. So, again, some judges have been impeached and removed from office, but never a president. You can impeach somebody all you want, but unless you have 2/3 of senators, guess what? They're going to survive impeachment. And all you're going to have is a lot of bad blood. My problem with impeachment is, I feel like today, anytime the House of Representatives is in one party's hands and the White House is in another, they're going to use impeachment as a weapon. And then before long, every president's going to be impeached. And I don't think that's good. Do you? No, it has the potential to be abused. I think it should be reserved for cases where there's actual law breaking going on. Not just, we don't like that guy. They impeached Andrew Johnson to get him out of the way. And I think they did Bill Clinton the same. Just because you disagree with someone politically is not a good enough reason to impeach them. It's just like, just because somebody has unpopular ideas doesn't mean you have to ban free speech. And this isn't as exciting as impeachment. I think impeachment's very interesting. My meme there says it all. Congress always has a super low approval rating. Everyone talks about how terrible they are, but they always elect their congressman, just about. So there's things that Congress may not do. They can't pass unconstitutional laws. An unconstitutional, a law that's against the Constitution is probably gonna be thrown out in court. In the 1990s, there was a law passed by Congress that allowed what's called a line item veto. That is, the president could veto a bill and is rejected, but he could reject just certain parts of it and keep the other. Somebody sued, made its way to the Supreme Court said that was an unconstitutional law. Favoring one state over another. Let's say Congress wants to give a tax break to states that voted for the majority party. Could they do that? No, because that'd be punishing the voters who voted the way they didn't want them to. Cannot tax exports. We're one of the only countries in the world that doesn't tax exports. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they did that?
We're just so nice.
Because we're so nice? Would it give the United States an advantage economically over other countries?
Yeah.
Yeah. The United States, as part of the whole, the United States to be a prosperous nation needed to be a trading nation. And the more we traded with other nations, the better our economic growth would be. So that's one of the reasons why it gives us an advantage.
It's more appealing to other nations.
And it's more appealing to other nations, knowing you're not gonna have to pay, this tax. And they may put a tariff on something coming from the United States. Like the Japanese had very high tariffs on American cars. And there were no tariffs on Japanese-made cars coming to the United States.
Wait, so you can't, don't you have to get a Japanese-made car like flown
No,
here?
they put them on roll-on, roll-off ships. Drive them on there and then drive them off. Of course, a lot of cars that used to be made in Japan by Japanese automakers are made in the United States now. Like I drive a Toyota and it was built in Texas. They built Toyota Camrys up in Georgetown, Kentucky. Honda's got a big plant in Ohio and one in Alabama and one in Canada. They can't tax business between states. They just trade between states. Like, for example, we ship, what's something we ship a lot of out of Arkansas to other states?
Rice.
A lot of rice, that's right.
Soy.
Soy. What's something else like here in Batesville that gets produced a lot?
Corn.
Chicken. That's right, chicken. They can't tax that chicken when it goes to Louisiana or Missouri or somewhere.
You know when they're working too.
What's
Smell it.
that?
So you know when they're working too, you'll smell it.
Yep. I've been in a lot of chicken plants.
Inside of it?
Yes.
Is it like a murder house inside of there?
Don't look at any open vats.
Mm-mm.
What is that?
That's like they put the things that can't be eaten.
Oh.
That's gross.
Don't look at any of that stuff.
Why were you in there?
I used to, before I was a teacher, I was in the material handling industry, and I would go in, mainly I was selling like dock and door equipment, like loading dock equipment in chicken plants and like high-speed roll-up doors and things.
Now, every part of our processing, meat processing, they use those, don't they?
Yes.
Like it goes into dog food and all kinds of
Dog
different
food
things.
or
All of our meat processing, they use every part. So that's that's a good thing.
Nothing's wasted. Nope.
Yeah.
You'll go by and you'll see a big vat of
Even the
chicken
toenails?
feet.
Heads and feet
It's
and
worth the smell. Actually, I don't think so.
You gotta live by a paper mill.
It would
oh
be
my,
nice.
that's true.
What does paper mill smell like? Does it just
A
smell like?
paper mill is the worst smelling thing, but somebody told me that's the smell of money, so.
Is it just burning?
Well, it's the
It's like a rotting
bleach they use.
flesh.
Luckily, there's not as much paper being used. All right, writ of habeas corpus. You probably don't know what that means. The writ of habeas corpus means that if you're arrested, you have to be told why you're being arrested, and you have to go before a judge. They cannot arrest you and throw, let's say, Sophia over here has, she's protesting in the park, she has an unpopular idea. They can't just throw her in jail and throw away the key, and not tell her why she's there. That's what makes us a nation of laws. No one can be imprisoned without a court hearing. You have to get that. One president, now Congress can't block rid of habeas corpus, but one president has. The Supreme Court told him he couldn't. He just ignored him and threatened to have the Chief Justice, Roger B. Taney, thrown in jail himself. They threw a bunch of people in jail during the Civil War without a trial. How did he get away with it? He just did. He was wily. He was smart. He was a genius.
Good politician.
Very the greatest of politicians.
Who?
Lincoln, the greatest. But yeah, he got in a lot of trouble. I got in trouble one time because I said that Lincoln during the Civil War acted, he basically was the closest thing the United States ever had to a dictator. And it was true. But he was trying to win a civil war. He was trying to prevent the South from winning. And so he suspended the Constitution in a lot of cases to accomplish that. But it worked. It saved the Union. It saved the Constitution. It saved the Republican form of government. So, bills of attainder. Bills of attainder were historically passed by the British Parliament. A bill of attainder declares someone guilty without a trial. Does that sound very fair?
No.
No. The courts couldn't find him guilty.
It's like guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah, guilty until proven. That's what a lot of countries have. Not this country, is it? Innocent until proven guilty. Ex post facto laws. That's a law that makes something illegal in the past. Let's say, you took aspirin last week, and they've declared this week that aspirin is illegal and passed law made it illegal. They can't throw you in jail for taking aspirin the week before. Congress can't override, for example, reserve power set aside for the states. States control their own school systems. The state of Arkansas, or State Department, Department of Education, they have control over the schools. In Arkansas, they delegate it to local districts, to what we call special districts. The federal government can't come in and take over a school. The state of Arkansas can come in and take over a school. Watch it happen in Bald Knob. But states control their own education systems. Does anybody know how the federal government influences schools and state education systems?
Do they make all the rules?
They don't make any rules.
They're the ones that.
They money, block grants, and they set conditions for those grants. The federal government provides a lot of money to education. They want you to do certain things in order to get it. I remember Common Core, when that was the big trend. In order for a state to get federal funding, they had to adopt Common Core curriculum. That's how they do it. It's like your parents give you money as a bribe.
What was that Common Core?
It was a long time ago, and I don't want to revisit those days.
Wait, how long ago? I think I remember doing that.
All I know is I went to a workshop in Russellville for 2.5 days, and that was all of the description of it. All right, I need everybody to get their Chromebooks out. Guess what we're going to do?
Fernando's?
No.
Test.
The who?
Quiz. And I'm going to let you use your notes that you took today.
Let me get into my.
I used to do this every day. It's on Classroom now. Good way to get you some points. I'm going to move up and start the next one.
Have you put in the grades for Fernando's?
Yes.
Okay.
I had some no-name ones in various classes. I don't know if that dude is a politician in this one, but it's a funny picture.
do.